Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Have you tested the microphone, video, and the screen sharing?
Wa alaikum salam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I think Wali has started the session now. So I was just waiting for him to play the opening.
اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما إنا عرضنا الأمانة على السماوات والأرض والجبال فأبين أن يحملنها وأشفقن منها وحملها الإنسان إنه كان ظلوما جهولا ليعذب الله المنافقين والمنافقات والمشركين والمشركات ويتوب الله على المؤمنين والمؤمنات وكان الله غفورا رحيما.
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I would like to start this today's session by first apologizing that we are starting really behind schedule, and also to apologize that I'm just, coming straight onto your face. I'm sure some of you who are very conversant with the way this program is scheduled will know that I'm not supposed to be the one presenting. I hardly do that on OU will believe, and also you possibly would be expecting Brother Teslim. I'm still hoping that we'll get Brother Teslim to join us as we go along on today's episode of OU will believe. And I must say, I've also been at the background for so long, not being in your part of the program fully, and to now have to do this today, I'm a bit flustered, so you will please pardon me. And inshallah, we want to quickly go onto the program, but I think like we usually do every time, we'll start off with the recitation from the Holy Quran. I'd like to call my darling sister Mariam Akinyemi to give us the recitation from the Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا لم تقولون ما لا تفعلون كبر مقتا عند الله أن تقولوا ما لا تفعلون إن الله يحب الذين يقاتلون في سبيله صفا كأنهم بنيان مرصوص وإذ قال موسى لقومه يا قوم لم تهدونني وقد تعلمون أني رسول الله إليكم فلما زاغوا أزاغ الله قلوبهم والله لا يهدي القوم الفاسقين وإذ قال عيسى ابن مريم يا بني إسرائيل إني رسول الله إليكم مصدقا لما بين يدي من التوراة ومبشرا برسول يأتي من بعدي ومبشرا برسول يأتي من بعد اسمه أحمد فلما جاءهم بالبينات قالوا هذا سحر مبين صدق الله العظيم.
Jazakumullah khairan kaseera. Thank you so much for that beautiful recitation of the Quran. And I'm always, very, very happy when I hear you recite the Quran. MashaAllah. Alhamdulillah. May Allah reward you. May Allah put it in your scale of good deeds. Thank you very much, Sister Miriam. And without much ado, I would like to thank everybody who have been, supporting the old Kent Road Mosque in these very, very laudable project of the rebuild of the mosque. I would like to thank you, and also use that opportunity to say, until we get to the destination, we still have to have the support. So we are still very much looking forward to your donation. There is a lot of activities. The Maracas is there. You can bring your children to learn the Quran, to recite, just like my beautiful sisters just recite the Quran. And also there is the youth camp that is coming up soon. I'm sure you're going to hear more about that from our brother Taufik, whom I believe is already here, so that I don't continue with my blabbering, because I wasn't expecting to do this. I'll quickly hand over to our Professor Mashid Baderi, our moderator, always, able and always there for us. Prof, I would hand over to you, please.
جزاكم الله خير الجزاء. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. We thank Almighty Allah for all His mercies upon us. Today is another week for all you who believe. May Allah continue to strengthen our belief, and may Allah continue to strengthen the program itself. I thank Sister Rashida for starting us off, perfectly. May Allah reward you abundantly. Today, inshallah, we have a guest speaker who is going to speak to us about a very, very important topic, relating to health. And as we know, looking after our health is a trust. Our health actually is a trust, which Allah has, conferred upon us. In one hadith, the Prophet ﷺ indicated that, Yawm al-Qiyamah, in relation to all the messages that Allah has given us, nobody will move a foot until Allah has asked us a series of questions. And one of them is your health, the health we gave you. What did you do with it? So it's really very important, that we look after our health. So we are really, very pleased to have, one of our mothers within our community, Dr. Sharifa Momo Jewi. Dr. Momo Jewi holds a Bachelor of Medicine, Bachelor of Surgery, MBBS. She's a doctor, qualified doctor. She's also a member of the Royal College of Pediatrics and Child Health. She's also a fellow of that, the Royal College as well. She completed specialist training in pediatrics with a certificate of completion of training in London at the popular Great Ormond Street Children's Hospital. And she is also a consultant pediatrician at the Queen's Hospital in Romford. She also teaches, she's a tutor, colleague tutor at the Royal College of Pediatrics and Child Health. And she, apart from that, she also committed to Islamic work. She is the female coordinator of Vanguard, community, which is a community that brings Muslim professionals together. She's happily married with children, and she enjoys visiting families and friends and also traveling. Dr. Momo Jewi will be speaking to us on sickle cell, sickle cell awareness and latest medical developments. Sickle cell, we all know, it's a very, don't let me say common, very known disease amongst the Black community in the UK. So we need to be aware of it and also know the latest medical developments. Research is ongoing. There's a lot of development. Previously, people tend to see sickle cell as a deadly disease, but now There have been a lot of research. So we'll be really, really honored to be updated and also to be given awareness about this disease. So we thank Dr. Sharifa Momojewi for your time. We pray that Allah put this in your Mizan al-Khair, and may Allah reward you and also reward everyone who has been helping to keep this program going. Dr. Day will be speaking for 25 minutes or thereabout, and we have opportunities for questions after her presentation. So, Bismillah.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yeah. Jazakallah. Jazakallah khairan for inviting me to give this talk on sickle cell disease, and Jazakallah khairan for the introduction. I'm actually at work again, and I think
I see.
You wonder if I'm always working. So when I was asked to do this presentation, I accepted before I went to check my rota. But when I'm asked to talk about sickle cell disease, is a subject I'm really passionate about, and I try not to say no, because I always seek all the opportunity to pass on the message about sickle cell disease. At times we think we understand what it is, but at times we don't. Only the people that have the condition understand it best. So I, as a doctor that look after children, I'm a pediatrician, I look after children that have sickle cell disease. I understand a little as well, because we only learn about this disease from those that have it. So I'm just going to share my screen. And what I say today, I may be saying it from a pediatrician's point of view. Most of them will be applicable to adults as well. And please feel free, if you think it's different, you can feel free to let me know. And also, whatever I say here today, it doesn't apply. It does not mean it is everybody with sickle cell disease that has whatever I say. You know, it's a spectrum. Sickle cell disease is a spectrum where it can be mild in some, moderate in some, and severe in some. But at times, you cannot tell who's going to have severe symptoms. And at times, children are well when they are children. They may become adults that are more unwell. So I try to let people know that they shouldn't think that sickle cell disease is mild in them, because even though they don't have symptoms, at times they can still develop complications. So the aim of this talk is for us to recognize how we may be able to prevent complications of sickle cell disease. Some of the things I would say you may feel scared about it, but please don't be. That's not the intention. The intention is to pass on the message for us to be able to empathize with those who have it, especially when it comes to work, those of us that employ, those of us that work in schools, because at times we don't understand when they want to take appointments or they're off school, we don't understand what's going on. So the aim of the discussion is actually to let us know what some of them may go through. I'll quickly share my screen. Can you see my screen, please?
Yeah. Yes, we can see it now.
Yes. So I'll just start from the beginning, because we see the children when they are first diagnosed. So here in the UK, every child should have what we call the heel prick test. The heel prick test usually done about day 5. Some get it up to day 7 and even up to day 9 or whenever possible, but ideally day 5 to 7. And this heel prick test is to check for some of the common inheritable diseases. You know, one of them is the sickle cell. So most families at times don't know that they will have a child that has sickle cell disease until they get that heel prick result. They may have an idea that they may have it in pregnancy, but they won't know. They have an idea because they are carriers, but they won't know that the child will have sickle cell disease. So when in pregnancy, carriers are identified and informed about the possibility. So the heel prick test is done and then the result comes out. So I looked at this paper that looked at children. It looked at those that were diagnosed with sickle cell disease between 2010 and 2015, over 5 years period in England. And this was what, I'll be very fast because I've got only 25 minutes. So this number was identified, and this was how they broke it down. So out of 1317 that were over that 5-year period, the number of children that had SS, it was broken down into the different types. There are other types as well, but these are the commonest ones. So we have SS having majority of the percentage, 64%, and then SCs. So from that point, when they're identified on the heel prick test, we need to go to the families. We need to let the families know within 28 days. And there is a lot going on about sickle cell. Sickle cell is a very passionate topic going on at the moment. At times, people think, oh, because other people are not affected with sickle cell disease, they are not taking it seriously. I think they are trying. Of course, you are right, because after all these years, we are still where we are, but they are making effort, so we must inform the family within 28 days, otherwise we breach. And within 3 months, we must see them in the clinic. And if we are not, we need to explain why. So that's how seriously they take it. And we need to start preventive medicine within 3 months. Otherwise, we say why. At times, families say no, they don't want to start the medicines. So I'll just go through these cases quickly. And these are real cases of some of the complications we've identified in children that have sickle cell disease. One of them is stroke. We've had a child, the first time the child presented was stroke. They never knew the child had sickle cell disease, and the child had a stroke. Because the child was not born in the UK, so was not identified on the heel prick test. So the first time was a stroke. So prevent strokes in sickle cell disease. So stroke is not common in children generally, but stroke is relatively commoner in children that have sickle cell disease, especially HBSS. So we have to prevent stroke. So we don't see stroke. If we see a child with stroke in the UK, we should be asking ourselves why, because they should have annual in children, ideally they should have annual brain scan, is ultrasound scan to check for risk factor for stroke, so that when we see there's a high risk for stroke, we need to prevent it before it develops. It's very obvious. I know you may not be able to read this, but it's very obvious that this is abnormal and this is normal. So, and that's still part of it, a stroke for the first time. So this was a child that was well. And then these are what the vessels, you can see this occlusion in the vessels because of sickling. I'm going to explain that later. And other complications that we see, they can have hip problem. We call it hip avascular necrosis of the hips because of poor blood supply. Then the hip, you can see the head of the femur is getting dead because of poor blood supply to it, because of the sickling. And it's part of what I put this there so that we can have understand what happens. This is a record. I wonder if I go randomly and ask you, when last did you go to the hospital? When last did you go to A&E? Perhaps some of you will say you've never been to A&E before, or maybe you try to remember if you went 3 years ago, or But this is someone that has sickle cell disease and has been in January 3 times, has been there 5 times. This is 2022, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These are real, and these are children. Children don't lie. So they were unwell and they had crisis. So this type of a child will not have a good school attendance. So the aim of this is for people to show empathy, because there are some people, they come to hospital and they are referred because of poor school attendance, because some of them have crisis and they are not sick enough to go to a hospital, but at the same time, they are not well enough to go to school. So they stay at home. So if you're a teacher and you recognize this, you can find ways of supporting them, trying to see how you can make them to catch up on their missed work. and things like that. What I am passionate about doing is, if possible, even go to schools to educate some teachers, because some of the feedback we hear is not very good. It shows ignorance and lack of understanding of what sickle cell disease is about. And then just quickly, I'll just talk about this sickle cell that it's been there, it's been recognized for years. You can imagine, since all over 1 century, we are still where we are. This is sickle cell. This is the normal red blood cells. So in sickle cell, that red blood cell, they will be like this, and then it sickles. And when they have painful crisis, they can usually have it in the arm, in the thigh, in the shin, and these are severe pain. And sickle cell, over that period of time, it has got better, but we are still really behind. It can still be better. In the last 20 years, there's been more progress than from the beginning. So what made the most important change to sickle cell disease was this penicillin. Penicillin was introduced in the 80s. And since then, I think the survival has improved a lot. So previously, we used to have a lot of child death, but penicillin was a single thing that made the first difference. And so when some families come and they don't want the child to be on penicillin, I'm usually worried. I take them through this and tell them this is actually the problem, and this is what has made a difference. But some of them still choose not to be on penicillin. But this is not encouraged, especially when they are under 5s, because that period they are really vulnerable. And this, despite the penicillin, there's some children, penicillin, extra immunization, some rarely, we still have child death from what penicillin should be preventing. At times, they say they've been compliant, but we can only take what families say. The other thing that made the next difference was this hydroxycarbamide. I'll talk about it very briefly later. And that was introduced here. Blood transfusions has made some difference. And recently, we're talking about crizanlizumab, which was the recent medicine that came out, I think, in the last 1 or 2 years. And these are the various types, I mentioned before. So SS, generally, most of the time, the most severe. SCs can be as severe. Some SCs can be as severe as SS, and they can also have complications as well. They tend to have more of eye complications. They can have hip complications as well. So I think the most important thing is for people to practice preventive medicine and use all their preventive measures, preventing crisis, not exposing themselves to what will trigger crisis. Most of the time, those that have sickle cell disease they know how to prevent this crisis from happening. And we ask them to hydrate very well, especially when the weather is hot as well. They need to compensate and drink more water. So this is common in Africa, Middle East, and some parts of India. And it's autosomal recessive, which means that if both parents are carriers, this, I would like to correct this bit. Most of the time, recently, those that have children with sickle cell SS or SC are parents that are carriers. And unfortunately, they didn't know they were carriers. Some of them have taken extra measure. They've tried to find out, are they carriers? But unfortunately, some of them also got false results. Some of them got tested, maybe in Nigeria. Most of the time when they asked, they said, oh, I tested in Nigeria. I was told I was AA. But if you are in the UK and you were once told you were AA, I think it's worth checking again, if, just to be sure, because some couple get surprises because they think they are AA and then they have children with SS. So it's also important to note that when 2 people are AS, both, they can have 4 children. It's possible that none of them will have sickle cell. It's possible for them to have all the 4 children will be AA. It's possible that all those 4 children will be SS. And it's possible that all the 4 children will be AS. It's possible that there will be a mixture. Maybe one will be SS, one will be AS, like that, or, So, but it's important to understand that, because some people think, okay, we are both carriers, so we have 1 in 4 chance of having an affected child. So that 1 in 4 chance is for each pregnancy. So it doesn't mean that if you have 4 children, only one of them will have SS. No. If you are both carriers, all the children can come, the first child come as a second. So we need to understand that bit. So I just thought I should put this there because those that get false results from Nigeria, this is exactly the test they do. So they call it hemoglobin electrophoresis. So it separates the hemoglobin into like this, so that those that have AA should have one band, one thick band here. And those that are AS should have one band here, and SS will have a thick band here. So you just wonder, how does it go wrong? Why are they not reading it properly? I don't understand where that error is coming from, why people are misinformed. Yeah, and also, assuming people are not misinformed, they just need to understand that they need to be honest, so if people are interested in still going ahead, despite their AS, they will go ahead. I think honesty is key because at times this type of things also separates couples eventually when they find out. So under stressful conditions, the hemoglobin is going to change shape and become sickled, and that's what causes the crisis. So when they have crisis, it can affect any organ in the body, vessels, they can be anemia, it can affect any organ. This is what happens. The normal cells changes to sickled and it clogs this vessel. So instead of the normal flow, it clogs. It causes the jam. It's like a jam, and this can be very painful. The blood cell is not passing through the capillaries easily. And that's how they can have end organ damage. You can imagine if this was to the brain, if this supply was to the brain, that means that area of the organ is not getting enough blood supply. If it's to the leg, they can have leg ulcer. If it's to the kidney, they can have kidney problem. If it's to, depending on the organ. And so we encourage them to hydrate and take all these preventive measures to prevent sickling. They can have the acute complications we see. They can have pain, usually average of 1 admission per year. They can have dactylitis, which is the painful fingers, and priapism is painful erection. And usually they can have this as young as 12 years, 10 years, usually around that 12 years of age. And of course, at times people that have this will be ashamed to go to the hospital to see exactly what is wrong. But we speak about this in the clinic, so that when they're having this, they need to open up and help, so that if they go for help, they can be helped. Otherwise, if it's not managed and it's lasting for more than 4 hours, it can cause problems with fertility as well. Other complications, they can have infections because the spleen is also not working in sickle cell. So that's why we also give penicillin, because the spleen is not working as it should. So we give penicillin even in those children who don't have sickle cell disease. Maybe they ruptured their spleen, or there was a trauma, so for some reason they had to remove their spleen. Then they need to be on penicillin for life. So it's not only sickle cell disease patients that have penicillin for life. It's mainly because that spleen is not doing the job it should do. So there's some infection the spleen will help to control. So, but we have to prevent some of them, which is pneumococcal, by giving that penicillin. And we also ask them to get extra doses of pneumococcal vaccine to prevent the same. These are the triggers as mentioned. So the management of pain usually educates caregivers and patients. We give them school care plan. And despite school care plan, at times, some of the care plans are not followed. Some of the children, maybe it rains, some of them will be very well. And then maybe one day, remember, children may be too young to know that they shouldn't stay in the rain, or when it snows, they don't know they shouldn't stay in the snow for too long, or they should protect themselves from getting too cold. So this is where we need the school to help as well. So we get the school care plan and guide these children, maybe when others are playing without their jackets, their winter jackets in the winter, they should encourage them to wear theirs. And we have individualized care plans for them. And usually when they come to hospital, usually average of 4 days. So you can imagine 4 days, and if it's frequent admissions, every 4 days. And usually by the time they come to hospital, it's not because they want to come at that time. They've already tried to manage at home. It's because they cannot manage anymore. So they've already been at home maybe for 1 week, and they're coming to hospital for another 1 week. And at the time they are going home, they're not yet back to the baseline completely. So they may still stay at home for another 1 week. So you can imagine all that in a school child. So that's a lot. So we encourage the schools to help these children. This is, I just put this there, like in our hospital, what we are doing to make it easier, so that because some of them need to come to hospital regularly because of frequent crisis. So we give them this card so that they don't have to queue, they have to go to hospital quickly. And people need to understand that the National Institute for Clinical Excellence is also got a recommendation that people that have sickle cell disease, when they come to hospital with pain, acute pain, they must be given pain relief within 30 minutes. So usually this is very hard to achieve. I can say this because we have made so much effort, like in my hospital, making so much effort saying, okay, don't queue up, come straight away, but it's still really hard. So, but everybody's thinking about this. Everybody's making efforts to get this to happen. So at times it falls out of 30 minutes, but that's the aim. So if people are not following guidelines, you can complain, you can raise concerns to PALS, because at times people feel like they're not listened to, you can make complaints to PALS, Sickle Cell Society as well. You can talk to them, you can advocate on your behalf. And I'll quickly talk about this. So I'm not sure how many minutes I've got left. I think time is going very quickly, or there's more to say. How many minutes, please?
Well, you can take up to 10 minutes more,
Okay,
because
yeah.
I mean, this is an important topic.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, so I talk about hydroxycarbamide all the time, and for me, I call it a wonder medicine, because I can see the effect on the children I look after. So there was this study done in the United States on children as young as 9 months to 18 months. They gave them hydroxycarbamide. It was a baby hug study. And this was what they found. So we had a placebo arm and the dose that received hydroxycarbamide. And this was what they found. Hydroxycarbamide helped their hemoglobin to improve. Some of them that have low hemoglobin, it helped it. This is the hydroxycarbamide, and those that didn't get hydroxycarbamide, they got placebo. It helped their improve their MCV. It improved their hemoglobin F. So by improving their hemoglobin F, it reduces automatically. If F percentage goes up, then S percentage is coming down, and thereby it reduces site crisis. It reduces platelets, because at times, those in sickle cell, at times for some reasons, even without an infection, you see everything just goes up and down. You see platelets are very high and they will be well. But when you do the blood test, you see lots of red. But the hydroxycarbamide helps to control all this. So the sickle cell, the sickling process is not just what I think we don't understand it enough. We are still trying to understand what is going on. It's not just the sickling. I think there's also problems with the blood vessels, the way the capillaries, the bloods are moving through the capillaries, the interaction of the sickle cells with the vessels can cause inflammation to take place. So platelets are high at times, white cells are high, and there's no infection, they are well, no fever. So, but this hydroxycarbamide helps to keep all this in place. Like neutrophils, that usually when you do random blood tests in someone with sickle cell, your high neutrophils is a marker of infection, usually high, but you see it keeps it in balance. And the reticulocyte is an evidence that blood is breaking down. Reticulocytes are usually very high in sickle cell. Well, the hydroxycarbamide reduces it, which means that sickling and the breakdown of the blood cells has improved. And clinically, you see it. I still don't have my figures yet, but we could see some of our patients that were maybe having 4 admissions a year before hydroxycarbamide to no admission a year, some with 10 with no admission subsequently. And some of them are asking, actually, when they come to clinic and they ask, do I still have sickle cell? They don't believe it anymore. And they really mean it when they ask that question, that does my child still really have sickle cell? Because of the way it has worked. But not everybody, It doesn't work for everybody. A small percentage may not enjoy the benefits of hydroxycarbamide, and we see hydroxycarbamide failure. In that case, we take them to the next level. So these are some of the things that we saw. Those that presented with acute chest reduced. So with hydroxycarbamide, less acute chest, and those with dactylitis, that's very young children having dactylitis. Hydroxycarbamide made it less. Dactylitis is swollen finger, painful hands, and the baby is just crying. You don't know why. But when you look at the hands, you may have swollen fingers, and that's what we call dactylitis. And hydroxycarbamide has also helped to reduce transfusion need. Yeah. So I put this document there. Is on the Sickle Cell Society website. You should read it. It's about No One Is Listening. And every trust is made to respond to this document. And we're taking this seriously. Look, because some of the things they said, low awareness of sickle cell among health professionals. After this, I went on a teaching spree. I've been teaching every time on sickle cell, trying to get our ED members educated, as much as possible. Any opportunity, I try to teach about sickle cell. And I believe they are doing the same in most other hospitals. Substandard care in general wards in ED. That was what they said in the document. Negative attitudes towards sickle cell patients, lack of compliance. So, but all this, I think education is key. So the more people will keep saying this, the more people are getting educated about it. But this document went to the highest level, and we had to respond formally via the chief exec of every hospital. Why should any one of us have to prepare ourselves mentally before we go into hospital? Nobody should need to prepare themselves. So, but it's nice that this document came out, because it's helped people to understand what people are going through, and hopefully we're having more empathy and doing the right things they should do. And I will not go through each, but when you read the document, it tells you more about it. Inadequate investment in sickle cell care. So because after all these documents, I think it's so important that we talk about these things. So after this, we see lots of investment coming up in sickle cell. And if you want something, you are more likely to be heard if you're in sickle cell specialty in the hospital. So just quickly, I think I mentioned about all the possible organs that can be affected, but just a diagram to show this. And this is what a leg ulcer is. So it's not common to have this, but I'm in the UK, but it does happen. A leg ulcer, it's a wound that would not heal, so this has to be taken carefully, managed carefully. Yeah. Leg ulcers, and this is stroke. So as I explained before, because of the clogging of the blood, so it affects the blood supply to that part of the brain and causes stroke. So stroke, when there's a stroke in sickle cell, usually that child needs to be on the blood transfusion program. It needs to be, the emergency management is exchange blood transfusion. It has to be managed acutely. We need to, within, in fact, it's an emergency. Stroke is not the time, the way you will manage stroke in adults is different from the way you will manage stroke in children. So when you see a child and a stroke and you hear sickle cell, please act very fast. They need exchange blood transfusion urgently, and that child needs to be on the regular blood transfusion program every 4 weeks for life. But there are other things that we may do. We may now do bone marrow, we may consider for bone marrow transplant. So this is what the chest crisis looks like. It looks like infection. So if you see a child with sickle cell and chest infection, if you're having chest pain, you'll be worried that it could be chest crisis, and we have to manage it as an emergency. They may need exchange blood transfusion. They may need blood transfusion if they are needing oxygen. It needs to be managed. And this is a dactylitis of swollen hands. And this is what happens in the hip necrosis. It can happen in most joints, commonly the hip. It can be in the shoulder because of poor blood supply to that area. This is what happens. You can see the bone when there's necrosis because of poor blood supply. So at times when people are having the symptoms, they need to act, because if the symptoms are showing, if you're seeing signs of this and you're not acting, then the bone will be dead. So just some papers showing there's been a lot of improvements in the years. This is the UK figure in London, because there's a lot of investment in management of sickle cell disease. And so no wonder that the outcome is also very good. But it's more preventive. People have to do their annual reviews. During annual reviews, a lot of things are picked up. So even if you feel well, but come for your annual review, during the annual review, we may be able to pick up low oxygen saturation. We pick up some things that you didn't think about. We check your urine to check for protein. It's this way to prevent renal damage. So I think annual reviews are so important. And people that work, employers, should give time for patients with sickle cell disease to be able to attend their appointments. Holistic management, that's the secret. We manage the child as a whole, and we look at all this. It's a lot of work, with a lot of hard work into this. There may be referrals, there's a lot going on. And the specialist nurses are fantastic. They do most of this communication, phoning families, and things like that. We never get tired of listening. I think we like to hear about what is going on with anyone with sickle cell disease. As all the specialists are involved in the management. Hydroxycarbamide, it was accidentally found to be useful in sickle cell disease. And then blood transfusion. So I'll just go through indications for blood transfusion. At times, someone has sickle cell disease, and one day we say, oh, I think you need to be on blood transfusion. Usually it's very shocking, but at times this happens. Like when I mentioned those that have a stroke, they need to be on blood transfusion. At most of the time, by the time we are saying the child needs to be on blood transfusion, or maybe the adult, some of them see it that yes, truly, and they see the improvement once they start with blood transfusions. It might be chest syndrome. The other thing I'll mention is the blood stem cell transplant, the bone marrow transplant. So I know most people, when they come or when they come to clinic, they say, oh, we want bone marrow transplant. So the bone marrow transplant is going to cure the sickle cell disease if it's successful, but it needs to be successful first. The success rate is very high in the UK, at least I know. If it's a sibling donor, more than 95% success. But the road is very rough. They go through a lot before the end of the journey. So because of that, there are strict criteria before one goes into stem cell transplant, because it could fail despite the rough road. It could still fail. There's no guarantee it's going to work. And if there's no sibling donor, you can have donor from maybe the parent, but the risk is higher with that. So, and the new medicine I was just going to mention is the CRIS. We call it CRISI just because it's also crizanlizumab. And just to make it easy, we say CRISI. So CRISI is currently not used in children, but from the age of 16 years old, we can start using them. And it's an intravenous injection. I think we all heard about it. It made a noise when there was a lot of noise about it. And we're all very happy that we have a new medicine after so many years. So it's given intravenously once a month. But I will inform you that currently, I don't think it has any advantage over hydroxycarbamide in terms of the efficacy. Hydroxycarbamide is so good. It's given orally once a day. Crizanlizumab is given once a month, but you need to come to the hospital for it. But there's no advantage currently. It can be used together. Maybe in an extreme case, you can use hydroxycarbamide and also start crizanlizumab. Crizanlizumab is the first new treatment after first over 20 years. And currently it's available on the NHS, but it's very strict criteria still. Before one is considered for this, we need to present such a child in the MDT meeting, and the MDT will agree that we should go ahead. So I think we're still waiting for it to be more available, hopefully before 2025. And the way it works, it helps by preventing blood cells from sticking to the vessels of blood, sticking to the blood vessels. As I mentioned, the criteria over 16 years, you must have at least 2 or more sickle cell crises in the 12 months. A sickle cell crisis is an acute painful episode that requires pain relief at home or in hospital. So you need to discuss with your clinician or hematologist or specialist nurse if you are interested, and they can put it forward to the MDT. And it's got some side effects, which are just the common usual side effects. It's only in 1 in 10 people may have side effects. So it's a good medicine based on these side effects, less common side effects. Yeah. And at times the reaction, the infusion sites may be the side effects, not actually the medicine. And I'm not sure we'll have time to talk about this, but just to give room for any questions. But quality of life is something we also think about in sickle cell, the mental health, career prospects, education, finances. You know, people wonder, when do I tell my spouse? When do I tell my employer? When, you know, people don't have to, you know, if we are all aware about what sickle cell disease is to just help those that have sickle cell disease not to need to go through this trauma. You know, you get a job and you're thinking, when should I tell my employer? I need to, because you may need to get more time out of work, you know. So I think awareness is the key. If we are aware of it, we'll be able to show empathy and be able to accommodate when people have to go for planned or even emergency appointment and support as we should. So I'm not, I just put this here just to remind ourselves during the COVID pandemic of this young guy that sadly, you know, the family didn't know, he was worried. You know, we should pay attention to those that have sickle cell disease, try to find out, because we are not going through what they are going through. So we don't know how they feel. So we should show we care and try to support as much as we can. So this is just some data about quality of life, comparing children with sickle cell and those without, you know. So you can imagine things like, I have trouble getting along with other kids, you know, I cannot do things that other kids can do. Not everybody will go through this, but this is what some have said. It is hard to pay attention in class. You know, at times parents, because maybe the parents are carriers and they don't even know children are going through this, or adults that they live with are going through this. But I just put it there just for us to be aware that it's possible for people to go through things. Even people that don't have any medical condition, they don't have any hypertension, they don't have diabetes, they don't have epilepsy. You know, people that don't have any medical condition can still have all these things. So you can imagine if you have something as well. So we should be sensitive to these things. Yeah. And this is just my last few slides. From a patient, for services to provide support, systems to be put in place. We should not be a barrier, you know, and to remember that sickle cell does not just affect the patient, it affects the whole family. So, and this person actually said, she was mentioning that she was 40 years old when she was given this, and saying that for the last 25 years, she had been on hydroxycarbamide, you know, hydroxyurea. And she said she continued to stand on the truth that sickle cell will not be the cause of my demise. She really had, she enjoys her life. She does everything she wants to do because she believes she got the benefit of hydroxycarbamide as well. Thank you very much. And if you need more information, to know more about sickle cell, you can visit the Sickle Cell Society website. There's the videos there as well that you can listen to people talk about the experience with sickle cell disease. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I mean, Jazakumullah khair jaza. I mean, I deliberately left you to go on because this is really very useful information. I mean, for the community, and I seek the indulgence of people on the platform for that. I mean, I believe there will be questions. I also have two questions here. They may be dumb questions, but I mean, the worst question is the question that is never asked. So I will ask them. And we pray that, I mean, Allah will put this in your mizan, okay? But before we start taking questions, let's quickly go across to the control room for a brief interlude.
The urgent need to cater for our fast-growing community of mosque users. The belief in Allah's promise to reward every effort towards the building of a mosque with paradise, and our commitment to the next generation of believers informed our decision to start the rebuild by pulling down the 100-year-old building. Now is the time to have a brand new purpose-built 6-story Old Kent Road Mosque and Islamic Cultural Centre, strategically sited here in London. Join us on this journey of faith by donating and encouraging others to do the same. You can pay in any currency. May Allah bless you abundantly. Ameen.
You're muted.
Thank you very much. I mean, as Sister Rashida started, I mean, we want to thank everyone who has been donating towards the reconstruction of the Old Kent Road Mosque and Islamic Cultural Center. But we still have a very long way to go, as you know, we are still really, accumulating money for the second phase plus. So inshallah ta'ala, don't let us be tired about this. I know we have to continue going until we reach the end of the project in our lifetime, inshallah ta'ala. So, hopefully anyone who will be pleased to put in some donation today, because of the time constraint, I'll be very brief on it. We try to raise 1,000 on this program every week for the SUF, to buy the SUF, which goes towards, the rebuild. And we thank everyone who has been donating. Last week was really very, good in that regard. We also have the Bricks of Barakah project. A brick is £100. Anyone who wants to donate towards that. We'll be taking the questions and also the donations together. I have somebody here who has already donated £50 to start off with today, inshallah. So we have £50, bismillah. So anyone who want to, donate, please let's make it quickly and also start taking questions so that we don't overrun too much. We will overrun a little bit today. I seek your indulgence about this, a very, very important topic. And health is wealth, actually, and within our community, we know that, there are people who suffer from this disease and who need this information. Even us, as Dr. Ojewi mentioned, it's not only the person suffering from the disease who needs the information. Every one of us need the information and we can really pass it on. So while we call for donations, we'll start taking questions, inshallah. Now, Sister Ojewi, I'll start with, a few questions, and I believe others will come on. Now, is it possible for you to explain? You said sometimes parents don't want penicillin. If it is useful, but why? That's one. Then the second one is, can a carrier eventually develop into a sickle cell patient? It might be a dumb question, but I just want to know how it progresses. Can somebody who's a carrier, for example, maybe an AS, can they eventually develop into a sickle cell carrier? My point is, can it be acquired? Can sickle cell be acquired later? They didn't start with it, but develop into sickle cell. Now, you talked about blood transfusion and that other medication, which you said is really very, very good. Is there any hope, for it to be curable completely? To take it out completely? In future, as research is going, as you did mention that, new advancement. As a practitioner, is there any hope that, down the road, we will get to the point whereby, sickle cell will be curable completely and people will be free of it? So if you can answer those briefly, I believe other questions will come in. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for those questions. I will start from you said, can a carrier
yes.
Once a carriers will be well. So if you are AS, you will always be AS. You will not have SS. You will not become SS or SC. So, but someone who is a carrier, who has been well all their life, can have a child that has SS if they have marry a carrier. Yeah, but there are lots of things now, like what's happening these days is carriers are the ones having children with sickle cell disease because they never knew. They've been well all their lives, so they don't know what sickle cell is. And at times with their knowledge, they try to avoid having a partner that has a carrier gene. But if we have false results, as is happening now with some people, that means two carriers will unknowingly know they are carriers and marry each other and then have a child with SS. Yeah. So if you are in the UK, I think it's advisable to check your genotype again, just to be sure. But if you're carriers and you still choose to go ahead, there are lots of tests available. There is prenatal testing. So before people conceive, there's prenatal. They choose the egg. The couple will go. As a couple, they will help them to be able to get the non-affected baby. So, but that facility is actually criteria based. So one must already have an affected child before one is entitled. But I think people are not aware. If not, that's why we wonder why we have someone that has 4 children, all SS in the UK. Because if you have an affected child already, you can have access to that facility, but you need to speak with your gynecologist or your GP. Even I as a pediatrician have just helped my patients. Ideally, I shouldn't be doing that referral, but I use my patient to refer the parent, so you have those facilities. And also there's what we call already, but at that time, they're already pregnant. So they test them. That one is during pregnancy. So, but most of the time, most people don't take this because part of the risk, they will tell you if you do that test, there's a risk of losing that pregnancy. So because of the risk that, what about if this baby is not affected and I do this testing? What about if I lose the pregnancy? So people don't tend to take that option. The other question, sorry, I think you gave so much. The cure for sickle cell. There's a cure. Bone marrow transplant is a cure for sickle cell disease, and gene therapy. Gene therapy is still in early stages, and there's a gene editing therapy. For the bone marrow transplant, the patient is cured, but they can still have children. They still carry the sickle cell gene, so they can still have children that have sickle cell disease. There was any other, you asked her, what was the other question?
The penicillin. Why do parents don't want it?
So yeah, the penicillin. So when they come to clinic and they don't want to take penicillin, it does. I'm not in a rush anymore because I really take my time to make them understand why we are giving them the penicillin. Very rarely do families say no to penicillin for their children. And it's interesting that those that refuse at times are people that already have sickle cell disease themselves. That amazes me. So some people would tell you, I have sickle cell disease myself, and I have not used penicillin all my life. And today I'm 50 years old, so I don't want my child to have it. So, but I always tell them that everyone is different. Yes, you are lucky you was fine. It doesn't mean everybody that didn't use penicillin will have a disease, but that the risk is too much. That risk, and those immunizations as well. So if one is not immunized, the risk is too much. If you look at those that are, of course, it's only Allah that guides us and that protects us, but we need to do our own part. It's not because that penicillin is what is making our life longer or no, but we need to use faith and at the same time pray and to Allah to guide us. So, but it's very obvious that in those countries where they are taking the uptake of the immunization is very high, and they are using penicillin, you could see the success rate is black and white. Allah has given them the knowledge. So we use it like Allah gave them the knowledge to be able to advise. So we should take it in a positive way. So those
Jazakumullahu khairan jaza. I mean, as you rightly mentioned, I mean, the reason I ask is, I mean, for example, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam indicated, I mean, the Sahaba asked the Prophet on one occasion that should we seek cure for our ailments? And the Prophet ﷺ said, yes, Allah does not, before Allah creates any disease, he has already created the cure. It might take time for you to know it, but when you have a disease and there's a cure for it, I mean, seek the cure. Don't say that when you want to bear the pain of the disease, seek cure. The Prophet ﷺ indicated this very, very clearly in the sound tradition. So, I mean, now, therefore, perhaps maybe for the benefit of our listeners, when the experts diagnose and indicate that this is a particular medication which is helpful, which is useful. Perhaps, based on this hadith, we are encouraged to, take medication that will ease our pain and that will, help us. Jazakumullah khair jaza. Now, any further questions? I think there's a hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring attention to the question that Dr. Jewi seemed to have answered by typing, but because not everyone have access to the questions in the Q&A, we'll still want you to talk about it. The question was about, can AA marrying AS give birth to a sickle cell child? So that was the question. So you need to answer for everyone's benefit.
No, if one is AA, in fact, if you are AA, you can do charity that way and say you actually want to marry AS, because AA marrying AS will not have SS. So that's, of course, charity to someone you love. What I'm trying to say is you shouldn't now be saying because you are AA, you only want to marry AA.
Marry AA.
Of course, you may end up marrying AA, but if you have an open mind, because currently, do we know that 1 in 4? So as we are on this call, on this program, 1/4 of us will be AS. 1 in 4 people are AS from Nigeria. So it's a lot of carriers.
But the usual fear is, AA marrying an AS, it can bring forth another AS, isn't it?
Yes, AS, yeah, but that's okay. AS will be well.
I agree totally.
AS will be well, so yeah.
Jazakumullah khair jaza. This is really very informative and also very, very useful. May Allah reward you. Now we have, my brother Taufik Akinpeju, who has a brief announcement. I seek your indulgence. We are just adding 15 minutes onto the program tonight because this information is really very useful. So Taufik, will you do it quickly?
Indeed. Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh. Taufik to the doctor for the very informative session. May Allah increase you and Allah reward you. Alhamdulillah, the purpose of why I am speaking to you today is to share with you one of our upcoming programs. I'm hoping that you can see my screen. So as many of you would know, on a annual basis, we take the kids away on a summer retreat. And this year, inshallah, it will be at the Fazl Wood Activity Center, which is just outside the N25, close to King's Landley. So alhamdulillah, it's going to be between the 26th and 29th of August, inshallah. And the topic this year is reviving the Sunnah. And this is a very important topic, especially in this day and age, from the perspective of we really need to impart on our children, on the kids, the relevance of the Sunnah today. We don't want to be amongst the people who are just like, oh, it's just Sunnah. We want to take away that as the default, as to no, it's the Sunnah, I'm going to strive to do it, and what is the importance of it. And inshallah, we'll be touching on topics like Sunnah Mu'akkada, to emphasize Sunnah. We're going to also be touching on often forgotten or often neglected Sunnah, inshallah. And we'll set the scene as well around some of the usul matters so that at least they leave with a basic understanding and foundation of the science of Sunnah, inshallah. So it's one that you definitely don't want to miss for your child, inshallah. So as you're on the screen, you're able to scan the code in order to get the registration form, inshallah. Otherwise, I have shared it once in the community WhatsApp group, but inshallah, I'm happy to share it there again. But for those who are perhaps on this call, I'll post it as well in the chat so that you're able to see it, inshallah. So aside from that, the cost of the program is £100. This year, we're indulging or seeking the assistance of parents to actually drop the children directly at the campsite and pick them up, or send them on a train, inshallah, and we're happy to receive them from from the nearest station. The details are in the registration form. But this is really a cost-saving measure in order for us to be able to keep the price the same level that it was 5 years ago. Today, despite the increases in the cost, the way we've tried to do it is to reduce the transportation costs. But inshallah, we hope to see you and your children attend this session, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakumullahu khairan jaza for that useful information. And I believe, parents will encourage their children to participate in this youth camp, youth event. As I said, someone has donated £50. Anyone who wants to, is there anyone who wants to, also support the mosque rebuild project today, inshallah ta'ala? Anyone, just very quickly, before we call it a day today? Anyone?
While we're waiting for that, sir, we've got some questions.
Yes.
Dr.
There are some questions. Okay, bismillah.
Yeah,
bismillah.
we really would want you, those questions, when you answer them on the chat, not everyone have access to them. So we normally would like to ask you those questions so that you can answer. So there's a question that says, what is the difference in procedure between stem cell and bone marrow transfer? And then there is also another question. I'd like to know if bone marrow donors suffer any effect after the donation. So
for the first one, bone marrow transplant. So anyway, first, when you hear bone marrow transplant, you'll be wondering, how did they do the transplant in the bone marrow? Yes, for the bone marrow transplant, they will harvest the bone marrow of someone that's not affected, and it will be transfused. So this transfusion is like a normal blood transfusion. You won't even know that they are having bone marrow transplant, except you are working in that field. So stem cell transplant, usually this can be got from the cord blood. So there are times when, like, if someone is affected with sickle cell, not only sickle cell, or any other condition, the bone marrow transplant or stem cell transplant can cure it. So they can harvest the cord blood and it will be transfused. So what happens is someone that is taking the transplant, like let's assume, like we're talking about sickle cell disease now. So one with sickle cell disease, there's usually would have gone through a lot of treatment, a lot of conditioning, a lot of things do happen. It's not as simple as I'm going to say it, but they harvest the bone marrow and they will replace it with the bone marrow of someone that's not affected. And there will be a lot of, before this, there would have been a lot of immunosuppression. So it's a rough road. They'll go through chemotherapy, conditioning, so many steps. And then, so the bone marrow of the one with sickle cell is now replaced after they transfuse. Like, it goes like a normal blood transfusion, and that goes to take position in the bone marrow of the person that has sickle cell and replace it. So the bone marrow that is not affected with sickle cell will now overshadow. It will now replace. But the patients will still go through some immunotherapy, immune suppressive medicine, so that their own bone marrow doesn't override. And there will be lots of monitoring, lots of blood tests. They can have infections during this period. It's a very difficult journey. But at the end, if it's successful, then it's worth the journey. So usually it's criteria based. It's those that have extreme, at times they have extreme condition. They are failed hydroxycarbamide. They're having blood transfusion. Despite blood transfusion, the disease is still there. Maybe someone that had a stroke, for instance. So of course, the only option left is that blood transfusion. And maybe that person develops some complication of blood transfusion and cannot have blood transfusion again. Some extreme conditions where, okay, let's go to bone marrow transplant. And of course, if it's successful, that person is cured. And there are other ways they still qualify, but I just use the extreme example for now. There are some that will just not tolerate hydroxycarbamide. When you give them, they're still having lots of crisis. We increase the doses, they're still having lots of crisis. In some cases, we say bone hydroxycarbamide failure, you know, and there are some people that just get it from other reasons, you know. So, yeah. And that's a little I would say. But we've got leaflets. If you're interested, we can give a leaflet about this. You can send leaflets about bone marrow transplant to you. If you go to the Sickle Cell Society website, you will get lots of information, lots of useful information about this as well. Yeah.
The second question is about the donor. Any effect on the donor?
So the donor, no. It's just like when you donate, if just like when we actually encourage people, you know, I think I didn't talk about this at all during my talk, but if we're trying to do charity, you can donate blood, you know, because not only in sickle cell do we need blood transfusion, even pregnant women, you know, suddenly they want to have a baby, they never thought they would need blood, they can have antepartum hemorrhage. You know, things can happen. Trauma cases, road traffic accident, they need blood. How do they get this blood? People donated them. And the question I always say to people is, if you need blood, will you take it? So we should also come from the point that, yes, we should be able to donate as well. Because if we need blood, we are going to take it. Yeah, and I know many people want to donate, but at times, because most of us do travel very easily, we don't qualify for donating anymore because they have very strict criteria for you to be able to donate blood. But if you are the one that don't travel, you've not had ear piercings, you can donate. If you have the opportunity before you travel, you think, oh, I've not traveled for 6 months. This is an opportunity. Let me donate before I travel. But once you travel, then your 6 months starts counting again. So let's try to donate when we can. Yeah.
Jazakumullahu khairan jaza. Thank you so much. Somebody was asking about, Tawfiq, the age, what is the age limit for the camp?
So 12 years of age, inshallah.
So that's the minimum?
Is the lower limit, yes.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. Jazakumullahu khairan jaza. I think we'll have to call it a day today. We have really benefited from Dr. Ojewi's presentation to us. It has increased our knowledge. I mean, even if you don't have this disease, you might have somebody, nearby whom you can, pass this information to. And we pray that may Allah continue to increase you in goodness, Dr. Mama Ojewi, and may Allah count this as part of your good deed. We really appreciate you. We know you're at work. Still, you found time to be able to do this. We hope to call you again, inshallah, in the future, and we believe you will honor our invitation. Now, today, before we go, the O ye who believe for today is in Surah Al Imran, Quran chapter 3, verse 200. You know, anything that deals with health needs a lot of patience. And Allah tells us believers, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who believe, isbiru, be patient, wasabiru, and encourage patience, warabitu wataqullaha la'allakum tuflihun, be steadfast and also have faith in Allah so that you can be successful. So patience, steadfastness, and faith, in whatever condition that a person is, we need all these three, patience, steadfastness, and also strong faith in Allah. May Allah continue to be with us. So until we meet next week, inshallah, I'll hand over back to Alaja Rashida Hassan to sign us off. Bismillah.
Thank you very much. And I didn't know I'll be completing this, but that's fine. We thank Allah for the opportunity to listen to our doctor, and that has been a really enlightening session, like Prof said. And I'm sure, like she said, it's about charity. Let us all do charity. Let's donate blood if you are able to, and let's also try to understand with people with different health conditions, so that even if we're not able to support or bear their pain, we are at least able to give them, that moral support that they really, really need. So on that note, we'll complete the edition of OU Will Believe today. And of course, on the issue of charity, remember the old Kent Road Mosque, we still need your donation. we still need to get the mosque built, and we need to be able to create more space to do the kind of wonderful work that Brother Taufik and the team will be doing with the youth at the camp over this summer holiday. So please donate, take your children to the camp, and make sure that you do a charity today by donating blood or by encouraging someone that's got a disease. Thank you very much. And I think that will be it for today. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Choose which space your bricks of barakah will build. Old Kent Road Mosque in the heart of London needs your urgent support. Donate your share now to invest in your akhirah. Rebuild the house of Allah and support our growing community. Phase 1 has been completed and £3 million is needed to complete the next phase. Stack your sadaqah with bricks of barakah. Donate today by visiting launchgood.com/bricks of barakah.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. إنا عرضنا الأمانة على السماوات والأرض والجبال فأبين أن يحملنها وأشفقن منها وحملها الإنسان إنه كان